What is up, all my fellow Avatar The Last Airbender fans out there? As you know, Avatar The Last Airbender is now out on Netflix. I've been working my way through this first season, or some might say book 1, and I have now arrived at episodes 4 and 5, Into the Dark and Spirited Away. And so that is what we're talking about. I'll be breaking down both episodes and giving just a little bit of a review. But before we dive in, make sure that you smash like and subscribe if you're new here. It would really mean a lot to me, and you could show some team spirit, like Spirit World, kind of a pun, a little Spirit World pun. But guys, I just have to say, you know, I'm working through these episodes, and after 4 and 5, I have yet to be disappointed by a single episode. It's actually only gotten better from the start, which, I don't know, I had expectations going into this series just because I'm such a big Avatar The Last Airbender fan, but I really just wanted to keep an open mind because, hey, this isn't going to be the original series. It's not going to be a one-to-one adaptation, and so we're just going to see what this thing is. But what this thing is freaking phenomenal. These 2 episodes specifically kind of blew me out of the water. I've seen some people kind of giving their episode ranks and reviews already online, and I've seen 4 and 5 and where they land on people's lists, and I'm very curious about that after watching these episodes, because if these 2 episodes are low on people's lists, that means the next episodes are going to be like absolutely insane. I don't know, but I do want to just kind of talk about these and break these down and just give some of my in-depth thoughts. So journey into this tunnel with me, and actually that's so dumb. But yeah, let's start with episode 4. It's titled Into the Dark, and I'll basically just break down the 3 main aspects that there were in this episode. You had Aang and Bumi, you had Katara and Sokka, and you had Iroh and Zuko. Last episode, I kept asking, where the heck is Bumi? We're in Omashu. Why haven't we seen Bumi? And you kind of see him towards the end. But then we get into this episode, and it is just Bumi. And we've talked about him a little bit here on the channel. Pardon my pronunciation here, but he's played by Utkarsh Ambudkar. And to be honest, it's really hard to play this character. This character is so zany and wacky in the original series that I wouldn't even know how to approach this. But what they did with Bumi's character actually shocked me. It really did. Instead of Bumi kind of tricking the gang the entire time and going through all of those little things, and then in the end Aang realizing, oh my gosh, it's Bumi, and everything coming together, we have this core kind of emotional story that's being told here with Bumi, who's trying to convey to Aang everything that he went through. This is a Bumi that's resentful and hardened and real. This dude's been alive for, a really long time. And they kept the wacky aspects to his personality. You guys know my channel, I loved the puns. He said a couple of those puns, and I was like, this is my favorite episode. But they also kept things like the rock candy. I didn't think that they were going to do the rock candy thing, but that was a very funny little bit when he kind of like jumps on it. I was like, yes! And I truly just thought that this guy's performance was dialed up to 110%, and he just killed it. I really think that in some of these scenes, because there's no offense towards Gordon, but he's an 11-year-old kid when this is filming. Obviously, you don't expect an 11-year-old kid to be giving an Oscar-worthy performance. You know, sometimes that happens, but in this case, like, I think Gordon does a good enough job when he's on his own delivering those moments, but when you have him across from other really good actors, that just elevates everybody. And I just loved the scenes of dialogue between these two and the little back and forth that they have. I also really loved the ending and the earthbending stuff. It's freaking wild and badass to see that actually put into live action. And, you know, say what you want about the effects, I didn't notice any. I thought the earthbending looked absolutely phenomenal. It rocked. But I think the story that was told was more so a growing moment for Bumi rather than Aang. Aang really held his composure during the entire experience and throughout the games and everything like that. The one thing that I did note at the end of the episode was, you know, we didn't see that much character growth with Aang, and I've kind of been waiting for that, but I'll talk about that in episode 5. The other side of this episode was the secret tunnel. That whole freaking thing, like, just the fact that they somehow incorporated and adapted the Cave of Two Lovers and what's his name, Chong, the singer with the ukulele, like when they were walking into that cave and you kind of heard that music in the background, I was like, all right, it's about to get real. And it did, and the musicians were awesome. Everything in this show just makes me feel like I'm in Avatar, no matter what the changes are within these episodes. Now I've just gotten so excited to see what these changes are and how they're going to incorporate things. I know some people might find a little bit of issue with it because because, originally it's Katara and Aang. Well, originally it's in season 2. It's not even in season 1, but it's Katara and Aang in that episode instead of Sokka and Katara. And yeah, I mean, Cave of Two Lovers like Sokka and Katara. But the way that they worked this into the storyline, first of all, I love the animation of the Cave of Two Lovers and showing all of that with Omashu. I thought that was a really fun aspect to this episode. But then giving this amount of time to Katara and Sokka, finally, like, for me at least, I felt like I could breathe a little bit with those two characters, because I was like, finally, these two are trapped away and they can sort some of their stuff out, and we just get to see some raw performances from them, like a little bit of dialogue, and I loved where it went. They've basically been at odds the entire season, and for me at least, they have felt individually like their characters, but they haven't felt like brother and sister, and this was the episode where finally it clicked, like, that is Katara and Sokka, that's the brother and sister that I want to see. Even Sokka complimenting Katara, like, hey, you're getting pretty good at that when it comes to the water bending. I absolutely love that. Oh, side note, I did love how Katara got her satchel too, and she freaking freezes Jet. That was so cool. But anyway, I just thought that whole side plot, for whatever reason why they decided to throw this into season 1, I thought that it fit perfectly into this episode. And them pulling little things like that and adding it into these season 1 episodes or whatever it is, like wherever the puzzle pieces fit, make them fit. And I feel like they certainly did that. I really enjoyed it. Also, the Badger Mole. That Badger Mole in live action got me so excited for Toph. That's really all I thought about when I saw the Badger Mole. I was just like, dude, I can't wait till we get to season 2. But the third and kind of final part to this episode was Iroh and Zuko. Obviously, you have the little first bit where Zuko's trying to break him out, but then Iroh is sent on the road and he's going to some sort of like labor camp or something like that. But he's with these earthbenders, and something that I found so interesting, like I was talking about with the adaptation thing, it's really fun knowing that this isn't going to be a straight one-to-one adaptation when you get moments like this, like these random moments that are such world-building moments and character-building moments. You have this earthbender who lost his brother in Ba Sing Se when the Dragon of the West, Iroh, attacked. And so he gives this very heartfelt, I guess I would say, but very angry monologue. His emotion stems from a place of pure anger and hatred, because this is the man who took his brother away. He belongs to the Fire Nation. And I gotta say, man, whoever this guy is, that monologue that he gave was awesome. And then lifting the rock into the air, like all that stuff was very powerful to me. But the thing that ended up revealing itself and kind of just becoming the most powerful to me was, when it comes to Lu Ten and his death and how he died in Ba Sing Se, Iroh's son. And so this guy is talking to a man who lost his son in Ba Sing Se and turned his back on the war and kind of deserted and was called a coward and left the war at that moment. And in comparison, this is a guy who lost his brother in this war, and he then turned to kind of rage and anger and to fighting. And it just showcases really the many different possibilities of war. And then, obviously we had some really cool action. We'd seen that clip before this show came out, but Zuko rescuing Iroh and them kicking ass against these earthbenders. Like, I loved that whole action scene, but the way that they very smoothly involved this subtle little plot line into the relationship between Iroh and Zuko, and they show that moment at Lu Ten's funeral, man, like, at these moments, I started to tear up because I was just like, gosh, like they're really highlighting the relationship between Iroh and Zuko, and that's what that story needs specifically. It needs a lot of that for you to really feel something. And they show that moment at the funeral, and Zuko talks a little bit about Lu Ten to Uncle Iroh, and then we see post-banishment Zuko standing on the ship ready to leave the harbor, and he has a bandage on his eye, and Iroh joins the ship, and Zuko's like, I don't need a babysitter. And Iroh says, how about a friend? And you see the emotion on Zuko's face, and it's just, oh man, that stuff tugs at my heart so much. And in the end, Zuko and Iroh are in this ship after that small little battle, and he sees the Avatar. He sees Appa flying across, and Iroh's like, what's that? And he's like, don't worry about it, kind of a thing. And so you already see this change kind of happening in Zuko. I thought that was very powerful, as well as just the end of the episode on the other side of things, with Boomy realizing that he has a place in this war. He needs to fight, and kind of coming out of that dark place that he was in. It was just a fantastic episode to me. I really, really enjoyed it. Maybe I was just so high on like getting to see Boomy that I was really excited. I don't know what it was, but I absolutely loved episode 4, and I didn't think it could get any better than that. But then I watched episode 5. So let's talk a little bit about episode 5, titled Spirited Away. A little nod to Hayao Miyazaki there, which I absolutely love. And I'm just going to kind of have a broad conversation and let myself go with this episode because I was feeling a lot of different things. When we first saw Heibai in the trailer, one of the things that I was most interested about was how they're going to handle the Winter Solstice Part 1 and Part 2, and if they're going to handle that whatsoever. And then we learned a little bit from Albert Kim how they're approaching the comet and like the deadline that the original series gives the show. So the original series in the first season, Aang has to basically become the Avatar and learn how to save the world in a very, very short matter of time, in a limited amount of time, because Sozin's comet is coming very quickly. But they completely took that out of this show. And so there's not that thing, and not having that comet erases a lot of these little plot threads throughout the first book. And so I guess I didn't really think about that heading into this series and how they were going to adapt that and what else they were going to do. But this episode freaking floored me with the decisions that they made. Don't get me wrong. I would love to see Winter Solstice Part 1 and Part 2 just in live action, exactly how it was in the original series. That would be brilliant. But this is a completely different show, and so the fun part is seeing the changes that were made here. And obviously we still have Aang, Katara, and Sokka. They show up to this village. There's still the scorched forest. There's a lot of similarities, but a big difference is Aang, Katara, and Sokka all go into the spirit world together, and they all kind of go on this small little journey. And there's a lot of very humorous moments in there. We see a lot of really cool creatures, including Wan Chi Tong from the Spirit Library. I love seeing that owl. That threw me for an absolute loop. But then we also see Heibai, and we see that he is injured, but he's not the one that's taking these people. But the one thing I didn't anticipate was Katara and Sokka to individually be taken. And let's get to that, because this is probably the highlight of the season for me so far. It's easily the highlight of the season for me so far. So Katara and Sokka, there are these amazing freaking moments where we get a little bit of backstory. We see the entire moment between Katara and her mother and how all of that happened. Katara was waterbending a little bit under the table. The Fire Nation soldier saw that, and the mother distracted the Fire Nation soldier and was like, no, I'm the waterbender. And Katara saw her mother die in front of her. Like, that was absolutely brutal. But then somebody reaches down and we see this face come down and surprise Katara. And it's Ko. It's Ko the Face Stealer. And that was so surprising and shocking to me to see Ko come in this early. If you watch the video where I was talking about the scenes that I most wanted to see adapted into live action, Ko was number 1. This creature was what I was most excited to see out of this show. And him coming out of nowhere in a very scary kind of horror way to Katara, that blew my mind. And then we get Sokka, and we actually see a Hakoda. And he's played by this guy that was just in True Detective Season 4 and turned in a phenomenal performance. So when I saw him show up, I was like, dude, you're the dude. But this was a situation about the ice trials, which in the original series, Sokka actually never completed these at the Southern Water Tribe. And Sokka ended up completing this with Bato. And Bato gave this little, whatever it would be, a little coronation to Sokka, as well as Katara, as well as to Aang for their bravery and their specific roles in that trial. And in this, it looks like Sokka actually did it when he was younger, but he kind of failed it, and Bato kind of just cheated and passed it for him. And so it's a very emotional moment. Sokka overhears his dad talking about basically saying like, man, my son's a failure. And obviously as a young kid overhearing your dad say that, your dad who is like the best warrior in the village, the leader of the village, it really would hit hard. And we actually see this little emotional moment from Ian Ousley, and he's crying. It was a cool moment, but it was shortly interrupted by Ko, the Face Stealer, out of nowhere again. And then we get to Aang, and Ko tries his antics. He tries to show the Southern Air Temple in all of its glory, and Aang is like, nah, fam, that's not what's happening. And so the fog lifts, and Aang is standing in this cave, and I thought the entire sequence between Aang and Ko, the Face Stealer, was absolutely brilliant. It'll have me watching this show again and again and again and again. I thought they knocked it out of the freaking park. Obviously, there's like the porcelain mask kind of face that it normally has, but it switched a couple times. It switched to a woman woman, and then it switched to I think like a baboon. I think that's a baboon, and it actually did the exact same laugh from the original series. It was super creepy. It was really dark and just eerie. It was everything that I wanted out of that sequence, and so I was so excited. But with Ko entering the picture so early, this is the dynamic that shifted. Katara and Sokka were taken by Ko, and so Aang has to figure out a way to save them, and he gets guidance in this episode, and not from another avatar, not from anybody else. They continued the thread of Gyatso, and I think just the emotion they've pulled from Gyatso being this father figure for Aang, and Gyatso said instead of going towards enlightenment at the end of his life, he knew that Aang might need him in the future. And so once again with Gordon, having him acting across a very talented actor just elevates these scenes, and I loved this intimate kind of scene between him and Gyatso again. Every time those two are talking, I just get a little bit emotional, but basically this plot point leads us to getting to Roku, and so Roku is no longer the Sozin's Comet stuff. Roku is now getting information on how Roku once bested Ko, and I thought that this was just a very clever way of navigating all of these stories and bringing it all together.
That's awesome!
But you have Gyatso giving this beautiful monologue in the end, and it showcases several different characters, and just the sheer power of that finishing off this episode. It was beautiful. But I know it was called Spirited Away. On the other side of the episode, there was a lot going on, and those two characters play into the power of that monologue. It was Zuko and Azula. Basically, Zuko finds June. He doesn't really like her, but Iroh ends up seeing the value of her, and man, this chick that plays June, like, she was awesome. And she's riding Nyla, and Nyla looked awesome, and so basically that's where that whole story is going now. I love that. It's basically a race against Admiral Zhao right now, and there's just a lot happening with Zuko and Iroh, but it was really episode 4 that a lot of their stuff kind of came together. But the other character that was focused on, Azula, I found this plot point very interesting, and I think a lot of people out there probably, I don't know if they like it or they don't. We're seeing some vulnerabilities from Azula really early on. We're seeing how much her father's approval has an effect on her, and we kind of see her start to crack. That's not something that happened with Azula until very late in the show, and so I'm curious to see how people react. It's definitely making her more human, and nothing is stopping me from enjoying Elizabeth Yu's performance. So I think that's really the highlight of it. It's like, okay, I'm honestly not sure how much I like that they're doing that, but I'm enjoying the character of Azula enough to kind of just like let it slide for now and just see where it goes. Tylee and May are in there as well for another quick second. That was a lot of fun to see, but it all did kind of come together in the end with Gyatso saying all this stuff with those 3 characters hanging in the balance. Really, really cool stuff. But honestly, guys, I think that this was my favorite episode so far. I think so. I'm going to binge this series a lot of times, so that's probably going to change, but maybe it won't. Maybe I'll end up loving it more. We'll see. But now I want to hear from you guys. What did you guys think of Into the Dark and Spirited Away? Did you enjoy these 2 episodes? Did you see anything that I might have missed and that I'm not talking about? I could be forgetting something. Please let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comments. I love reading your guys' comments. It makes this place feel a lot more like a community, and Avatar fans rule. So, but as always, make sure you smash like on this video as well. Subscribe if you're new here. You can follow me on X at Jones Vibes Only, and don't forget to keep up the good vibes, guys. But episode 4 and 5 down, on to 6 and 7.